The California Racial Equity Commission recognizes the traditional territory of Klamath rests on the unceded homelands of the Yurok. Today, these tribal nations continue to uphold their sacred responsibilities to this land and waters, despite the legacies of displacement. The Commission's presence on this land comes with a commitment to listen to and to amplify their voices and actively support their sovereignty. We're honored to be here. Dr. Estes, do you have a community acknowledgement that you would love?
Thank you, Chair Matthews. Thank you to all that are joining us today. I do have a community acknowledgement that the Commission voted upon in June of this year. We thank and honor the indigenous nations of this land who contributed to the building of this country, recognize the forced and unpaid labor of California's indigenous people under Spanish, Mexican, and U.S. rule, especially within the mission system, where Native people were enslaved to build infrastructure, harvest food, and serve colonial institutions. Our ancestral lands, knowledge systems, and labor continue to shape the cultural and economic foundation of this state. Native nations in California contribute to the arts, governance, land management, cultural revitalization, and health sovereignty. We acknowledge and thank the people of African ancestry who were stolen from their homelands and brought to this country and whose free labor played a major role in the formation and economic wealth of this country. We also honor the contributions of Black ancestral scientists, inventors, entrepreneurs, whose contributions were stolen and were never acknowledged. We honor and will not forget the thousands upon thousands of lives lost at the hands of enslavers, vigilantes, law enforcement, and other forces of suppression in this country. We affirm and uplift those of African ancestry living in this country today as a living testimony of the strength, love, faith, and fortitude of a resilient people. We acknowledge the international and global immigrant contributions who shape this country's economy and help build this infrastructure. We honor the contributions of Asian immigrant communities, including Chinese road workers, Japanese farmers, Filipino cannery workers, and field workers, and other Asian workers. We acknowledge Latino and Mexican immigrants have been integral to shaping economic growth in the U.S. from building homes, filling roles of agricultural needs, and other service industries, have been influential to providing everyday needs to fellow Americans. These communities have filled critical workforce gaps and enriched American society with different intersectionalities of culture and beliefs. We recognize the impacts of U.S. militarism, colonial oppression, capitalistic tourism, appropriation of cultural heritage, and more have affected Pacifica and Oceanic people in island relations. We acknowledge the harms of climate change, environmental pollutants from global powers that are harming heavens and destroying the oceans. Thank you for your community's contributions and roles of service and public health, the teachings of reciprocity, and how those lessons can be woven into societal structure, serves as a model of hope and change for this country.
Thank you so much for sharing that acknowledgement. We will move forward to agenda item 1C, which is on the agenda. Dr. Estes, can you please provide a brief overview of the agenda for this?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Chair Matthews. We, of course, are in the welcome item. We will then go to public comment on members. Our items not on the agenda to our consent agenda, which is the approval of the June 26th meeting minutes. I would like to request that we actually move up the model for transformation and draft framework as an action item immediately after the consent agenda, to give the commission sufficient time to address the content, as well as to be mindful of any necessary travel needs to support commissioners being able to travel home today. After that, we would take a break and then go into the reflections from community immersion. We do have hard copies of the agenda and other relevant materials at our physical location, 190 Klamath Boulevard, Klamath Meeting Room in Klamath, California. Meeting materials are also available online on our website at racialequity.lci.ca.gov on the meeting materials or meetings. Chair, I turn it back to you.
And thank you so much for sharing that overview. I will accept that recommendation to move agenda item number 5, model for transformation, and work to number 4, move back. Reflections from community immersion and engagements. I could have a motion. This is next. Motion to approve.
I second.
For the person a second, would you please take a roll call?
Commissioner Candace Bowles. Yes. Commissioner Virginia Hendrick. Aye. Commissioner John Kim.
Just to be clear, this is just to move the item.
Just to move the item.
Yes.
Commissioner Gabriel Maldonado.
Aye.
Commissioner Traco Matthews.
Aye.
Commissioner Jolie Almadera. Commissioner Dr. Manuel Pastor.
Virtually, aye.
Commissioner Yolanda Richardson. Aye. Commissioner Angelica Salas. Commissioner Dr. Luke Wood. Commissioner Samboya Wright. Passes 8 out of 11 commissioners here with us today.
Thank you so much, Jess. We will now welcome any opening remarks from distinguished guests. Do we have any tribal leaders or representatives here?
Chair, our chair, right here, chair, excuse me. I want to just acknowledge that, Chair Joseph, the attending also to attend the civil process meeting at that moment to accept grades. Chair.
Yes, we look forward to that. And, both of those commissioners are much more handsome, so I don't mind at all. Sure. But all right. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any other tribal leaders, elected officials, or representatives with us today that we did not call out formally or formally recognize? Please let us know if you are here to share. Okay. Well, we thank any leaders who do make the time to be here today, whenever they do arrive, either themselves or their staff, or appreciative of their support at this meeting of the California Racial Equity Commission. We will now move forward to item 1E, establishment of quorum and public comment process. Jessica, program analyst, Racial Equity Commission, are done some good work, but we'll take the roll call to establish quorum and provide an overview of the public comment process. I'll turn it over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Chair Matthews. I will now begin the roll call to establish quorum and provide an overview of the public comment process. Commissioner Candace Bowles. Present. Commissioner Virginia Hendrick. Present. Commissioner John Kim.
Present.
Commissioner Gabriel Maldonado.
Present.
Commissioner Traco Matthews.
Present.
Commissioner Jolie Onadera. Commissioner Dr. Manuel Pastor.
Here.
Commissioner Yolanda Richardson.
Present.
Commissioner Angelica Salas. Commissioner Dr. Luke Wood.
Present.
Commissioner Samboya Wright.
Present.
Thank you. We have at least 8 out of 11 commissioners here with us today. We have achieved quorum. No.
Before you move forward, I did want to note that Commissioner Pastor is here. He's voted twice. I
Yes.
just don't know if we have this audio working yet.
I see he's there, but can we please check his audio to make sure that he's able to engage in that? Commissioner Pastor, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
Can
we
you hear
cannot
me?
hear you.
Yes. Oh, you cannot hear me? Okay, let me switch devices.
I don't know what that introduction is, but that. Jen, do we need to turn it on? Do we need to turn something on to the side?
Yeah, so when he speaks, the green box is on, so it seems to be fine on his side.
Yeah. It was just a little bit that Dr. Pastor will kill for him.
Can you hear me?
as we are working on the audio for Commissioner Pastor. Thank you.
I want to note that Commissioner Pastor is joining us virtually and following the teleconference rules for advisory bodies outlined under Government Code Section 11123.5, which allows members to participate remotely. And thank you everyone for joining us today in person or online. I'm here to provide guidance for the processes for this hybrid meeting, which we have designed with the intention of maximizing access by members of the public. For those joining the webinar online via Zoom or by phone, please note that your microphone is automatically muted when you join. To minimize the risk of background noise, you will not be able to unmute yourself. For those joining online via Zoom, please note that the webinar platform doesn't enable video for attendees, so we will not be able to see you. If you need technical assistance during the meeting or have a question about the meeting process, there are a few ways to contact us. If you are online via Zoom, the best way is by using the Q&A function with several members of the Racial Equity Commission team monitoring it. If you join by phone and you have access to email, please email racialequitycommission@lci.ca.gov. To make an in-person public comment, you can pick up a comment card at the public comment staff table and return it to one of our staff members. You will need to submit a public comment card for each item you wish to speak on. If you plan to make a public comment virtually, you must be online via Zoom, either through the webinar or phone option. To submit an online public comment form, visit racialequity.lci.ca.gov/meetings and complete the public comment form linked there. You'll need to complete a separate form for each item on which you wish to speak. You may complete a form at any time during the meeting. And when the public comment period for your item opens, we will call on your name. When you hear your name, please raise your hand. To do this online in the Zoom webinar, click Raise Hand under the Participants menu. Find that at the bottom of your screen, and to raise your hand by phone, press *9. When it is your turn to speak, a member of our team will unmute your microphone. If you are online, you will see a window pop up alerting you that the host is unmuting you. You will need to click the option to approve unmute. After that, you can begin your comment. If you are on via your phone, you will hear a recorded message alerting you that your line is unmuted. You can begin your comment once your line is unmuted. Each speaker will have a maximum of 2 minutes to make their remarks. Speakers requiring or using interpretation services are allotted 4 minutes to facilitate full participation. If you're online, you'll see a timer pop up on your screen. Please monitor that and wrap up your remarks accordingly. Whether you are online or on via phone, Chair Matthews or staff will notify you when your time is up. After that, we will mute your microphone. You do not need to take any additional action. If you are unable to complete the online form but would like to make a public comment, please email racialequitycommission@lci.ca.gov. Thank you. Back to you, Chair Matthews.
So much, Jess. Before we do move forward with public comments, I'd like to do a quick update. Commissioner Pastor, can you hear us?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me now, Commissioner Matthews?
Fantastic. And we can hear you a little bit. Your voice is important, so I just wanted to make sure we hear you.
Thank you. And you were correct that I did vote twice before the aye and the present.
Fantastic. We will now take any public comments related to it. Any public comments?
As a reminder, you may submit a virtual public comment card by visiting racialequity.lci.ca.gov/meetings and completing the public comment form linked there. You can also pick up an in-person public comment card at the public comment staff table and return to one of our staff members. You will need to submit a public comment card for each item you wish to speak on. There is no public comment for this item. Back to you.
I see a hand.
That will be for the next agenda item. Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic. We move forward. Thank you so much to agenda item number 2, and that is public comment on matters not on the agenda. Before we transition to the bulk of our agenda items today, we will first take any public comment on items not on the agenda. Again, this is an opportunity to provide public comment on items not on the racial equity commission's agenda for today. Yes, we have public comments.
We have 2 in-person public comment. We will have, no public comments. Each speaker will have a maximum of 2 minutes to make their remarks. Speakers requiring or using translation services are allotted 4 minutes to facilitate full participation. If you're online, you'll see a timer pop up on your screen. Please monitor that and wrap up your remarks accordingly. Whether you are online or on the phone, your Matthews or staff will notify you when your time is up. After that, we will mute your microphone. You do not need to take any additional action. We have received comment cards from the following individuals: Shannon Holbert and Kim Mamarwaldo. When you hear the both of you can come up here and line up to make your public comment. Right here at this table.
And we ask that you sit at a microphone so that people online can also hear you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for making the time to come out and do the listening session. My name is Shannon Holbert, I'm a member of the World Community. Also, the president of ITEL, which is the internet. And then I'm also the American part of Renewables, which is a solar company that constructs solar systems of reservation. One organization that is a company. But I'm not here on your reservation. Just wanted to make sure that that there was that we don't forget the last mile, because too often funding is about making the biggest impact for the most number of people. But there are people that exist in very rural areas that have a higher percentage of income to maintain household costs. Housing is a huge thing. With housing, it's also addiction, and there is a very an untold hardship that happens in the very rural areas. And so just want to make sure that when you're making your considerations that you're doing outreach towards organizations and people that are doing those in-person touch points with areas that are normally not there. Also taking into consideration as Native American, just how there's a predator that comes into play when it comes to Native Americans, and not really wanting to reach out for help or ask for assistance, but the willingness to share the story is always there, and being able to pull out the bits that come out of that story is super important. So I would say that Native Americans are also overrepresented in the prison population, and also the statistics for violence for Native American women is 80%.
Thank you so much for your comments. Appreciate it. And I did want to just note, we will, due to the time crunch, I'm going to hold everyone very closely to that 2 minute. So I guess if you're and
good morning, my name is Kim Amaranto. I'm a Europe tribal member. I'm also a member of this community. And today for this comment, I'm here representing concerned citizens of this community. A local church has effectively strong-armed the Klamath community out of the Klamath Community Center and erasing community access, playground, the library, the signage, are excluding the very people it was built to serve. In a predominantly Native American and marginalized community on the Huron reservation, where equity and inclusion are already fragile, What was once a true community hub for gatherings, receptions, funerals, celebrations, etc., has been carpeted, decorated, and repurposed as a church sanctuary. The bylaws were clear. The Klamath Community Center does not belong to one family, to one church, or one group. It belongs to the whole community. Yet the current board, made exclusively of church members, has excluded all activities outside of church. The original plan of the community center was destroyed by the Christmas flood in 1964, which destroyed this town. Eventually, the Klamath Chamber of Commerce began hosting what is now known as the annual Salmon Festival to raise money to rebuild the community center. It wasn't until 1997 that enough funds had been raised to purchase land and draw up the designs, and construction began and was completed with volunteer labor, and the new center opened in June 2000 on Salmon Avenue, just a short walk from here. For 20 years, the center has hosted a library, senior lunches, a quilting group, office space for the water district, and a plethora of other community activities, all run by volunteers. But the church has erased it all. They've kicked out everyone, taken what they don't want to the dump. They dismantled and removed the playground, removed all signage and indication that the building is a center.
Thank you for your comments. We are out of time. So,
Thank you.
welcome. Do we have any other comments, Jess?
I do see someone online with their hand, and as a reminder, you may submit a virtual public comment card by visiting racialequity.lci.ca.gov/meetings. So if you could submit a public comment card.
We will take that comment. See your hand up. You're welcome to speak, Dr. Ryan.
Hi, I don't know if this is, if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
I just wanted to let you know that many of the speakers I'm having a hard time hearing. It sounds on this end, the sound is very garbled.
Thank you for making us aware.
Yes, that's all I wanted to say. I do have the CC on, the closed captions, but I think because the sound is garbled, it's not all the words I'm able to make out. So I just want to let you know, and especially perhaps for people who are hard of hearing, that they may be having a hard time hearing the comments and what people are sharing right now. But I'm going to stay on. I'm going to keep trying. But I just wanted to let you know if there's any way that could be fixed. Thank you.
So much. We will continue to work towards greater clarity. Bye.
That concludes public comment for this item. Back to you, Chair Matthews.
Thank you so much, Jess. We will move forward with agenda item number 3, which is the consent agenda. This is an action item, so I will ask you to vote at the end. We transition to agenda item number 3, the consent agenda. This meeting includes the approval of the June 26, 2025 meeting minutes. Are there any comments, questions, or discussion from the commission? Commissioner Kemp.
I believe these are the minutes that I've reviewed, but I just wanted to make sure. It noted my time of departure from the meeting. And then I do believe that it also later in the and I'm just to make sure.
Questions or responses?
Is there specific cleanup that you're looking for?
I believe it's on page 7 of 7. Towards the end, it noted, I think it may have been a different picture that may have made that comment, and not there's no issue in. So
Isn't the comment related to under next steps for staff action?
yes.
What we can do is, I haven't heard anybody say that's what I said. So what I can do is go back to the recorded minutes, and there are two things that we can do. We can either, accept with the idea that we'll make that change, or we can bring these back to the next meeting, which will be December.
I'm fine with it. That's okay. Yeah, sure.
Okay, good. I think that might possibly be my comment because it's right after my initial comment.
So I will edit the minute to reflect Mr. Maldonado making that statement.
Trying to remember the meeting, but basically my comment was before, it looks like that would be a subsequent comment. I mean,
So we have one edit to the June 26th meeting.
Any other comments? Questions?
Name racialequity.lci.ca.gov/meetings. And completing the public comment form linked there. You can also pick up an in-person public comment card at the public comment staff table and return to one of our staff members. You will need to submit a public comment card for each item you wish to speak on. And it looks like there is no public comment for this item, so we will move to roll call for the vote from the commission on the approval of meeting minutes from June 26th.
I will need a motion in a
Okay.
second first. So may I have a motion to approve? Thank you so much.
Second.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Okay.
And I just want to clarify, it is a motion to approve with the one edit. If you don't mind.
Just please take the roll call vote.
Commissioners will now vote on approval of June 26th to 2025 meeting minutes with the one edit. Will commissioners please vote aye if they approve of this item? Commissioner Candace Bowles. Aye. Commissioner Virginia Hendrick. Aye. Commissioner John Kim.
Aye.
Commissioner Gabriel Maldonado.
Aye.
Commissioner Draco Matthews.
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Manuel Pastor.
Right.
Commissioner Yolanda Richardson. Aye. Commissioner Dr. Luke Wood.
Aye.
Commissioner Samboya Wright.
Aye.
The vote is 9 in favor of approving the consent agenda and 0 in opposition. The motion passes. I will now pass it back to Chair Matthews.
Thank you so much, Jess. We will move forward that singular day. And in alignment with the decision and the action that we took earlier, we will move forward to agenda item number 5, model for transformation and draft framework. This is also an action item. George Chow will be the facilitator for this part of our meeting. In our June Commission meeting, we got the model for transformation on our agenda, but we're unable to cover the discussion in that meeting timing constraints. As a result, we have brought that agenda item, including the consideration for a vote to formally approve the model, forward into this September Commission meeting. As part of this agenda item, we will also be discussing feedback to the draft framework today. If appropriate, the Commission may consider a vote on the framework. Given these two topics, the Commission can entertain 2 separate motions for this agenda item. Depending on the length of this discussion, we may call for a short recess, not at lunch yet, during this agenda item and return to it after we reconvene. I will hope that we actually can get to move before we have a break. But I will now pass it to George Chow to facilitate our discussion with us.
All right, thank you so much, Chair Matthews, and good morning, everyone, commissioners, those who are joining us in person today and online. Like Chair Matthews just set the scene for us, there's just a lot packed into this agenda item. We're going to start with the model for transformation, have a discussion around that before moving into a discussion about
the framework. So the vote that Chair Matthews was just articulating to us will come at the end of discussion. Just want to reiterate that as we go into this conversation. So with the model of transformation, we're going to start to talk about this, and I know folks have heard this conversation in different forms, especially for the commission. I know there are always folks sort of joining us for the first time at these meetings, so I'm just going to provide some quick background context for us. The model for transformation is a summary of the commission's approach to impact. So it's sort of a graphic representation, it's a visual for how we think about the work of the commission and how that ultimately feeds into the impact that the commission hopes to achieve. So our path to getting here with this model, in December, the commission was presented with a first draft of the model for transformation. There was some robust conversation and feedback on that early draft. We didn't have quorum to vote on approving the model in March. And then we tried to bring it back in June, but ran out of time in terms of getting through the meeting content and discussion and travel, logistics and all of that stuff. So this item is continued from our June 2025 meeting. But since that first iteration of the model for transformation, staff have been making a few updates just based on the feedback that was received. And so folks should have a copy of this in their binders. I believe there are also copies posted online if folks are interested in seeing it there. But these updates to the model include three main things. One is there was some conversation back in December about like how do we make this language clear? Like let's write this in plain language. That was really important. So there's been some work to make the language a little bit more accessible, digestible. The second piece is there's now a new layer. I know it's been a while since we've seen this framework, or I'm sorry, this model. So I want to call our attention to the orange box, that third, or yes, moving from bottom up, it's that third tier. And so previously we had commission values, commission activities, and then it sort of went into this green box. So we said, if our commission operates from these values, our commission works on these activities. This is what's laid out within our scope. And then that hopefully creates these strategies or outcomes that we're looking for. And I think what we heard from the commission was, well, wait a minute, the commission is not the ones directly implementing a lot of the recommendations that are coming out of the framework, right? So we can't just directly then go and produce these impacts. And so for that reason, there's this orange box now that starts with collaborate with partners to implement the racial equity framework. And so it's really clarifying, we're taking the framework and the work of the commission and then partnering with state agencies to then go and implement the framework in the way that makes the most sense for their context, for their organization, to then create those impacts or those outcomes. So that was the second change. The third update is that we heard, power shifting was really important to include in this conversation. There was also some pretty robust conversation about that in December. And so our green box at the top says the racial equity framework is used to advance racial equity, address structural racism, and shift power to communities. Now, for folks who remember that conversation, we had talked a bit about, what does it mean to shift power versus just putting it into this box and then that's kind of it, right? And so some of that power shifting really has been worked into the framework through conversations or strategies, I should say, about the co-governance tool for multiracial democracy. You all may have seen that in the review of the framework. Guidance on community engagement being used as a way to shift power to those who are historically marginalized.
And then just other areas throughout the framework, that was really a lens, if you will, that the staff took to be able to think about the recommendations in there. But given that where we left off in our conversation, I think we want to come back to this today to make sure that, you know, that concept was really interwoven throughout the model and throughout the framework meaningfully. And so there's one question, and you know, kind of see where the conversation goes if we want to continue digging into this, or if we're feeling comfortable with it, we can keep going. But we did want to pose this question to the commission, which is, does the model for transformation produce a pathway to advance racial equity, address structural racism, and shift power to communities? So have we been able to build a framework that allows the commission to effectively get to that? So I will open it up. And if the answer is yes, great. But if not, I'm curious what specific edits so we can get to a more finalized draft to vote on later today.
And I would just like to clarify that, you know, really this is a roadmap or model to help guide the work of the commission, but we have to be very mindful about what is the charge of the commission. The commission is a public advisory body. The commission has been charged with developing a framework, providing technical assistance, engaging communities throughout the state of California, as well as producing an annual report that would have data, as well as additional tools and recommendations for addressing racial equity in the state of California. And then again, with the audience that you all defined last June. So I want to make sure that that context is very upfront, and that it is about what is within the control of the commission to work with state agencies and departments. But we are not in a position to direct a state agency or department through this model for change, let alone our charge.
Thank you so much, Dr. Estes and Joyce, for the great setup. Are there any comments, questions, or discussion from the commission?
Yeah, I just wanted to see if I could get some clarity from Dr. Estes as to what the definition of directive is. Because I can suggest without directing, and I just want to know what the lines are that we have in terms of being directed.
You are a public advisory body. You can provide, you're asked to provide recommendations on tools, strategies, methodologies to advance racial equity and address structural racism. And I'll have to call it legal to provide any guidance around, does a directive fit within that definition of a public advisory body and the charge of the commission? And I believe Matt or Doug, are you on the line where you can provide, come off mute and provide some guidance on this?
Yes.
And we'll have to have you speak up as loud as you can so that we can hear you.
Right. Yes. Yeah, the commission is charged with providing that advice and direction. So I would say
Can
that
we have
is.
you pause a second? Can we get a microphone over there just so we can have it amplified? Okay.
So have me try again.
All right. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just saying that the commission is charged with advancing racial equity through those resources and best practices. So I consider that a directive to provide that information.
So just for clarity, it's a direct, you have the ability to provide information. The commission has the ability to provide information through its charge.
Yes.
What's your question?
I think maybe through our suggestions and what we actually write in the content, then maybe people can give us feedback if those suggestions that are in the content constitute within our bounds.
Okay, I want to be clear that we're talking about the model for transformation and not necessarily the framework yet.
Yes.
And just for full context, and I'll get to that in a little bit, this was part of the review of legal as a full context within the context of the full framework.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Other comments, questions? Commissioner Kitchen.
A question on the new box, the orange one third from the bottom. It makes sense to really prioritize or focus on this collaboration and partnership. The four elements underneath the community engagement, budget equity, data, and organizational infrastructure, how are those four dependent?
If you look at your framework, it's in alignment with part one of the framework. In addition, community engagement, budget equity, and data are actually articulated within the charge of Executive Order N 1622. And we wanted to provide, given the conversation of the commission over the last year and a half, there were a lot of conversations about what are the things that are necessary to be put in place to support the implementation of those items of community engagement, budget equity, and data. It also aligns very closely with the committees that you all have established.
Yeah, I noted that there were a lot of the committees. It doesn't include the implementation of technical assistance, though, which is, I don't know if you want to say it's under organizational infrastructure, but I do wonder about the implementation of technical assistance community and that lane of work.
I would actually say that the entire orange box is implementation of technical assistance, the collaborative partners to implement. The charge of the commission is to provide technical assistance on the framework and elements associated with it. If you wanted to add technical assistance, we
I'm also looking at the orange box, and I don't know if this is where it goes, but can you speak to who you mean by partners, collaborative partners? Is this like CBOs? Is this state agencies themselves?
You all have defined the target audience of this framework as being state government entities, inclusive of judicial, legislative, administrative, with an attention to local government. So that you all have defined that and noted on that in June.
So we're to assume then, because that is how I read this, that the translation is collaborate with state government to implement the racial equity framework, and then why aren't we using the word state government?
We can.
So I mean, I would love to hear from fellow commissioners your thoughts, but I think it would be good for us to be, I mean, I think what you laid out earlier and what we're grappling with here is the commission lacks teeth, we lack the power to direct state government. So in this framework, it would be good if we say clearly, because I don't know where else we would, I don't see it said anywhere else in the framework that intended audience is state government. So collaborate with state government. And weird because the commission is state government. So I throw this out to you all to like, where are we going to say it then?
If I may, I would acknowledge that I believe in the first section on the introduction, it does identify who the framework is for. I think again, centering on the model for transformation and trying to make sure that the two documents connect. I think that would be a good suggested edit, should the commission want to move forward on changing partners to government, or I think the question is, do you want to be explicit as into the audience that you defined, or just general state government work?
So I'm sure other commissioners have thoughts. I would be comfortable with just that quick, simple, clear edit. Say state government instead of partners. Other commissioners' thoughts? Mr. Richardson.
In the spirit of the conversation around just directive and pass power, it's very different.
I would agree with state government, and state and local government.
I feel like we almost have two edits on the table.
And I appreciate that suggested amendment, because within the charge of the Executive Order at 1622, it does state that we are to provide technical assistance to local government in alignment with the framework.
Commissioner Dustin.
Oh, I think my concern got addressed. But Dr. Estes, if you could speak a little bit more about what technical assistance might mean. with state government, state agencies, because maybe this is jumping ahead, but when I look at the framework, it's not as though all the assistance would come from the commission. There's just suggestions about different ways state government could operate with regard to those 4 buckets of community engagement, budget equity, data, organizational infrastructure. So could you just clarify a little bit about what you think technical assistance means?
Thank you for that question. The commission staff has already been engaged in some level of technical assistance with agencies and departments between reviewing strategic plans, consulting on issues around training and other areas. I think I've even done some technical assistance related to budget equity. So there has been already some ongoing kind of conversations that we've been having to do in alignment with the things that we've talked about within the meetings here. I would say part of where we are as a commission and where the framework is in giving those ideas about how technical assistance can be implemented is we're in a position where we have to actually build that out. And that's, we do have an implementation and technical assistance committee, but it's hard to build implementation and technical assistance strategy without knowing what you're strategizing on and advising on. So we have plans for future meetings later this year to have those conversations about how we start to build out a strategy to ensure that we are looking at how we change habits, beliefs, behaviors in alignment with a racial equity framework that is here or to be designed in the future. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I just as we move forward in that process, I think it'd be useful to put some guardrails around it so that you don't get too stretched. It sounds like what you've been doing right now is clearly within reasonable parameters.
Absolutely. I think one of the things we have to be mindful of is the size of our staff and the resources that we do have within our budget to provide that level of support, and to do it to the agencies, departments, boards, and commissions is a lot. And so we have talked about, are there ways to prioritize technical assistance that we would provide? Are there things that we can do in terms of providing information to agencies and departments on the content of the framework to give them a little bit more time to engage in their own work and understand kind of how the framework connects to what they're already doing, and then work with them on building.
Mr. Wood.
Does this need to be a motion to make the change, or is it something you can accept?
I think we can note it when it's time to make the motion and vote, just with that. Get the thoughts, commissioners, before we open it up to the public. Okay. Moving forward, thank you all for sharing your thoughts, questions, and insights. We will now take any public comments on agenda item number 5, model for transformation. Any comments on that part?
Actually, if I may, I think we have one public comment for this agenda item that also includes the framework discussion. So I'll leave it to you to decide if you want to move forward with public comment here and how we do that in the remaining part of the agenda.
Okay, we will do public comment one time after we have had conversation about the framework.
So I move to adopt the model of transformation oriented.
Thank you so much for the motion. I'll go second. Commissioner Ray.
And I would just like to be clear on the motion with the edit. Is the edit state government or state and local government?
State and local government.
Got it. Thank you.
And we cannot vote on this until we have public comment, so we'll move forward with the discussion regarding the draft framework. I believe we would have opened up public comment for the votes. So, okay.
Yes, so I think the structure right now is 2 discussions public comment and then votes, but we'll leave it to you.
Let me please clarify with legal. We do have a motion on the floor. Do we need to vote on that motion and with public comment? Or can we hold a motion on the floor and continue the conversation?
You need to take public comment before voting on the motion that's already on the floor. Or you can table it.
I'm comfortable with moving forward with public comments, even if they have comment about the framework as well, but they should record that discussion. So we'll move forward with public comment, and then we will take a vote on the motion on the floor. It's been seconded, so Jess, I'll turn it over to you. Okay.
Chair Matthews, as a reminder, you may submit a virtual public comment card by visiting racialequity.lci.ca.gov/meetings and completing the public comment form linked there. You can also pick up an in-person public comment card at the public comment staff table and return to one of our staff members. You will need to submit a public comment card for each item you wish to speak on. We have 2 virtual public comments on this item and 1 in-person public comment. We will have in-person public comments first, followed by virtual public comments. Each speaker will have a maximum of 2 minutes to make their remarks. Speakers requiring or using translation services are allotted 4 minutes to facilitate full participation. If you're online, you'll see a timer pop up on your screen. Please monitor that and wrap up your remarks accordingly. Whether you are online or on the phone, Chair Matthews or staff will notify you when your time is up. After that, we will mute your microphone. You do not need to take any additional action. We have received comment cards from the following individual in person. Shannon Holbert, if you would like to come to the phone.
And as she's coming forward, I want to clarify one point. We will ask that you focus your public comments at this point just on the model of trust commission.
Okay, Shannon Hubbard. And please forgive me if I am overstepping and talking about the framework and not the model, but I'm very, very unfamiliar with the process in general. But I did know that you were talking about how, as part of the model, you had made the designation that you were making information more easily digestible. And so I think that my 2 comments are kind of along that line, and that would just be to consider the reach. And one, it goes back to the last mile considerations and making sure that that becomes part of the model that is going to flow out into how the framework is then distributed out. The second one is I was expecting way more people to be here. And what I realized as I was sitting there is that Maslow's hierarchy is very, very real. And so there are communities and areas that you're going to be visiting and looking for feedback, but many people are at home just trying to struggle and make it and figure things out. And so please take that into consideration. I don't know how you are going to address that within this model that then adjusts the those are my 2.
So much for
We have 2 virtual public commenters. When you hear your name, please raise your hand on Zoom. You can do this by clicking raise hand under the participants menu, which you can find at the bottom of your screen on the Zoom platform, or by pressing *9 if you are joining by phone. And a member of our team will unmute you. Our first virtual public comment is from Alejandra Ponce de Leon. You may now begin.
Given her permission to speak, so we can. Oh, there we go. You see, you may proceed.
Hi, good morning. My name, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so my name is Alejandra Ponce de Leon with Catalyst California and member of the California Racial Equity Coalition. Thank you. Just wanted to provide a comment about like just the model of transformation and hearing the conversation from your fellow commissioners here. I do want to elevate that this model, should kind of really map out one, the role that the commission is playing, but then the reality that the commission doesn't have the mandate to really enforce or push, for things to be implemented. So calling out like what is the role of state government, governor's office, legislator to really help get to that end goal, that vision, or that transformation. It's going to be multiple players and recognizing that each player has a different role in helping state government advance it. And so I think it would be important to have that reflected in the model that speaks to the various roles and the way that they work together, to make this happen. And so that may be an important piece of like, what does it really take to have this implemented? So just wanted to elevate those points, and I'll save my comments about the draft for the later part of the conversation. Thank you so much.
So much for your comment.
Thank you. Our next public comment is from Vince Luce. Vince, you may begin when you're ready.
May proceed.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I actually want to save my comments for the framework, so I'll hold my comments for now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We'll certainly get to you in a short period of time. I just want to make a comment, point out that the green box working together to make California for All a reality is designed to articulate the state's role, state's mandate, as it were. And so just wanted to point that out as a response to the last comment. Thank you so much. Any other public comments, Jess?
That concludes public comment for this item, and back to you, Chair Matthews.
Fantastic. We will move forward with the vote on the model of transformation. So I will turn it over to you. We have a first and a second coming on the floor, so we will take the roll call of Jess.
Thank you, Chair Matthews. Commissioner Candace Bowles.
Aye.
Commissioner Virginia Heather. Aye. Commissioner John Cannon.
Aye.
Commissioner Gabriel Maldonado.
Aye.
Commissioner Trego Matthews. Aye. Commissioner Dr. Manuel Castro.
Aye.
Commissioner Yolanda Richardson. Aye. Commissioner Dr. Luke Wood.
Aye.
Commissioner Semboya Ray.
Aye.
The vote is 9 in favor of approving the model for transformation and 0 in opposition. The motion passes.
Thank you so much. Congratulations. All right. Before fantastic. Thank you so much, Chairman Cedar. And so we will pause for just a moment to have speak. Come forward.
Good morning. My name is Joseph James, Chairman of the York Tribe. I come from the village of Stragon, located on the Columbus River. I want to thank the commissioners here for this important meeting. It's not just a meeting that you're conducting. It's so much more than that, and I appreciate that being able to speak for our state of California commissioners here. Sorry I was able to attend the dinner. I've got a lot of moving parts going on my end right now, and so. But again, I wanted to highlight the work that you're doing. Before we get into that, as we know, as Indigenous people and people of color, the state of California, we as Indigenous people have been on the wrong end. History tells us that. So we're to this day, we're still dealing with that generational trauma. whether it's trying to remove our self, our identity, our language, our culture, or our heritage. It didn't work. We're still here today. That does not mean those scars and issues are still there. And as people who always look back, present, and future in our way of life, we're balanced people who wake up. We give thanks to the creator of our well-being, and we bless ourselves and bless others. That's who we are. We're a natural resource tribe here in the Royal Klamath River. Everything that we do is surrounded by the river, natural resource environment. We wake up. That's the place we are. We're rich in identity, heritage. So I wanted to speak of the work that we're doing on many things. You heard of we're in a beautiful area, but we also have many obstacles. One of the I'll talk with regarding murdered and missing Indigenous people. Going back to boarding schools, proving our identity, and we're still dealing with that crisis here today. We've made great strides in a short period of time, but there's so much more we can do within the state of California with your help and assistance of that regarding law enforcement protect our people. We're a public law community state, so funding is tough for our tribal police and our tribal court systems here to combat that crisis. Predators think this is a safe haven, finding gaps and loopholes to conduct our people. And we've been saying no more through the tribe, through the local on the North Coast, and through the state, California, and federal level. So I wanted to bring that forward and keep that in people's mind. That is still real and happening here today, doing that great work with our partners throughout California. We talked about, I know I heard you talk about the education system. We have a number of river schools along the reservation. The school system education is a vital key important to us at home. Funding for that. When we talk about inequity, we lived it too. We were still living it. We're still living it. We have many people here to this day on the reservation that do not have power. We saw our internet go in and out today. Unfortunately, we live that day to day, and people still to this day as we speak do not have access to power. When we go home, we flip our light on, we take that for granted. Still here in Northern California, we had people fighting for water, for utilities, the basic essentials that we have here across the state of California. We live in a fire-prone area. Resources that we need to combat fire, funding, building our capacity. Our Yurok language. We have a number of people that are gone now. At one point in time, they thought our Yurok language was going to be, forgotten or eliminated. That wasn't the case. We had strong elders at that time create the apprentice and mentor program. That living now. So we live that. We provide our language and our head starts, our school system for all the tribe. Again, I just wanted to mention that. There's many things to highlight here, but there's also struggles and issues that we're dealing with in real time that are very challenging for us as Indian people. We don't ask to be for a handout. We as your people, we are hardworking people. We are fighters, as you'd say. We believe in what we say, and we do it. Not for us as an individual, so our generations don't have to struggle and go through the same struggles that we have gone for. So we're very passionate, hardworking people. We love one another. We love those open dialogues and discussions. Have that. But again, I just wanted to welcome you here and thank you for bringing this board here. Again, looking for resources, help that can come out of this meeting, this report. What can we do to make the change? We're still living in, all of us as people of color, we've all been through hurdles, elimination. Geez, We still talk about the first governor here today. Had bounties from us. And when I go back to the Capitol, provide testimony, I think of where I'm at and what I'm talking about. And knowing this was ground zero to limit us at one point in time. It's interesting. But again, I will still go back there and advocate, find our friends, our partners, and build bridges. We want to make that change. We believe in that. Believe in that hope. We believe in that change. And so again, the continued work that you, thank you for the work that you're doing. Continue to move the needle, make that change for all of us. But all of us Indian people of color. We paid that price. We paid that price. Again, we're here to make that change and difference. With that, Chairman and the Commissioners, I want to say thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the Bureau of Tribal Government and its people. Thank you. Thank you so
much. Before you go, we do have something that we would like to share with you as well. Thank you so much. God bless you. This is a basket of several gifts from all parts of the state of California. And actually reminds me of something that we do in church. Often when we give a tithe, we tell the Creator, you only give back what already belonged to you. We know that the land over this great state belong to indigenous people. And so the fruit and the olive oil and all of the different things we know is just giving back a portion of what belonged to you and to your people. So we just wanted to say thank you so much for welcoming us into your space to explore the beauty of this region. But also I wanted to personally say thank you so much for even allowing us to sit in these sovereign seats. I know that this is not something that is typical. We recognize the honor, and from the bottom of our hearts, the California Racial Equity Commission, we say thank you. Please receive these gifts. Where we were, we were going to move forward with our discussion in regards to the draft framework. So Joyce, I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair Mendes. That will be hard to follow. So I will move us now into the discussion around the framework. And so again, a little bit of setting the stage for folks, especially the folks who are joining us today for the first time, and kind of trying to learn more about this framework. It's really been a journey since the commission started meeting last January. And so it's hard to imagine it's already September this year. But for the better part of a year and a half, or just under 2 years, this commission has traveled throughout the state of California to engage with communities in many different parts of the region, many different geographies. The commission has met with a wide range of community members, organizations, leaders, different perspectives and experiences and domain areas that they're working in. And the commission has really really tried to learn from the efforts that are happening across the state. I think a big part of the conversation very early on was, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's not try to, build something that's already been built. Let's learn from the practices that are already being implemented, that are already happening. And so that's the journey that the commission has been on. And this process really aimed to create this framework that was built by and alongside community members, right? Setting out that process. So I think back in June, we started to take a look at, well, we continue taking a look at draft outlines, I should say. There's been a few different iterations of these conversations in past meetings. But since that June meeting, the commission staff have been continuing this process of building the framework in alignment with community feedback, culminating in the draft that you all have received. And so to set this context, set more context as we enter the framework discussion, I do want to turn it over to Dr. Estes to share more details about the development of the draft itself and the content that you all received.
Thank you, Joyce. And just to continue to reground us in the charge of the commission, what you see on your screen here is a little bit more of a plain language version of the executive order. But the charge being, and there's a reason why we're regrounding in this, just because we want to make sure that we're doing this in alignment with what is within the authorization and control of the Racial Equity Commission. So again, developing a statewide framework no later than December 1st to be delivered to the governor's office and state legislature, as well as to the public. Helping government entities such as state and local government as articulated in the model for transformation, implement and understand how they can do better in engaging community and implementing the tools and strategies that have been outlined within the racial equity framework, as well as developing out an annual report that articulates the ongoing feedback that we continue to hear from community, identifying ways to monitor impact of addressing racial equity across the state, recognizing that changes like this take time, and also continuing to add recommendations on best practices and tools. I would be remiss in not acknowledging the staff that are here for you today and having pulled together much of this work, traveling, writing, engaging, and there's a lot that goes on behind closed doors that the commissioners and public really don't get to see, that staff have really been partaking in. So I'm taking a little bit of a point of privilege to publicly acknowledge the staff as well as all of our consultants that have supported us on this journey. So if you would join me in a round of applause. And just a deep thanks and gratitude for all the work you do, and particularly the work that can feel unseen and just unseen. I know the time and the energy that everyone of you put into this work, and I just have a tremendous amount of appreciation for a team that has my back, that has the backs of the commissioners. If we can go to the next slide, Joyce started to highlight, we wanted to kind of give some numbers behind the work of the commission, approximately 45 hours of public meetings like this one, 175 hours of meetings with communities, advocates, and allies. And I would venture to say that we're actually closer to probably 1,000 community residents that have engaged throughout our community meet and greets since January of 2024. This map here shows the communities that we have touched. You can see Sutter County in there, which is Yuba City. We had that, I think, a week and a half ago. And then you see Del Norte County or Del Norte County, Willamette, where we're at today. So we have covered a lot, but there's still so much to go and cover with this commission. Next slide, please. This is just a quick slide of some of the roadshow visits where we actually went back to the communities that we had initially visited over the last year to share updates on the process of developing the framework, things that we're learning from other communities, and to continue to build relationship with communities and gather information. Special thanks to the commissioners that were able to travel with us to various points. You can see some of them in some of these photos here. I wanted to make sure that we acknowledge some of the common themes that we've seen from across the state of California. And even in our community meeting last night, many of these same themes resonated between access to quality education, lived experience of equity and mental health and well-being, as well as through substance use. To that conversation, I also think some of the public comments also resonate with access to basic needs and what it means to do the last mile. Next slide, please. As we continue to learn from community, we continue to build on some of the themes that we're seeing and hearing, but many of them continue to resonate. And we know that this is not unique to communities, but really it's a cumulative need, particularly for communities of color throughout the state. And when we talk about communities throughout the state, we go to the next slide, we really want to emphasize that we see community as the experts, going from community voice, leading through the engagement of local organizations, experts, advocates, the commission itself, working with state and local government to achieve those community impact and improved outcomes. These public venues are critical for community as well as subject matter experts and advocates to be able to discuss and share what matters. It positions staff as well as the commission to provide guidance to government on how to serve, listen to, and include everyone more fairly. And finally, it positions state leaders as well as state government in general to try the tools, to adapt the tools to meet their needs, whether they work in transportation, housing, healthcare, education. But we position people to have a framing of how they can apply and advance racial equity to sectors. That kind of leads into how we've actually gotten here to this point, and between background resources, meetings, comments from commissioners, advocates, even engagement with state government. This has been really important in that the commission is not the implementer. State government, local government is the implementer. So wanting to make sure that we're creating tools and providing recommendations on strategies that they can do that does not create extra burden that many government employees are already experiencing. We did have an initial review of the first draft of the framework with the Framework Development Committee, which is Commissioner Pastor and Commissioner Richardson. There have been 2 rounds of legal reviews to ensure that the framework is in alignment with all applicable law. You can go to the next slide, please. This is kind of an initial view of the timeline that we are at. We are here in September at this meeting reviewing the framework, and we do have a deadline of December 1st. So there are 2 months in between that we have available to build consensus and be in a place, in a position where the commission feels comfortable on a public vote to approve the framework. Again, it has to be approved, delivered and complete on December 1st. I want to make sure I provide some context before I transition it over to Joyce about what does it take to have a draft available for you all. So for each draft that we do, it takes about 2.5 weeks of review before commissioners actually see it. And this is maybe 1 or 2 legal reviews, plus a variety of other key informants. Time is not our friend right now. And I want to make sure that the commission is aware of opportunities more broadly to continue to iterate, because as I think we've shared and talked about throughout the last 1.5 years or year and a half more, is that racial equity and advancing racial equity and addressing structural racism is a journey. It is something that will take time and intention. It is not something that will happen with this one draft. It's going to take iteration. It's going to take learning from state agencies and departments on what works, what doesn't work. And you all have been identified as subject matter experts to move agencies and departments through those iterations. And so what's beautiful about the executive order is that it does allow us to iterate through an annual report. Should you want to add additional tools and strategies in this journey of advancing racial equity through the sunset date of this commission in 2030. Just to be fully aware, that 2.5 weeks of review does not include the staff research and writing. So depending on your deliberations today, if you wanted to meet in October, I would need edits, changes, paragraphs, whatever you would like, probably by tomorrow. Because that means I will be working on it through the weekend to get it to particular folks to review on Monday. And they would have it for 5 to sometimes 10 days. There would be probably iteration, and you would not see it until it would be made public 10 days before the scheduled meeting. So I wanted to make sure you all have context about what it takes to actually get another version to you, should you want to iterate on the version that is presented. And I'm gonna pause there because there may be questions or comments. And I want to make sure that we're clear on kind of what is the context that we have to operate in. But I will turn back to the chair to see if there's anything before we go into Joyce's further facilitations framework review.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Estes, for that context, and Joyce as well. I know all commissioners have had ample time to review in great detail, framework, indices, and all of it. So this is your time to share any questions, insights, thoughts about the draft framework before we move forward, understanding the context as well. In terms of timing, all that Dr. Estes just.
Chair, if I may, if I'd like to entertain questions or comments related to the context, and then Joyce will facilitate us.
Questions, comments, thoughts about the context first. From Commissioner Kim.
So I appreciate the comments you said, Dr. Estes. So then the September 24th deadline for review does not seem
That
happening.
That is for, it's really for public comment, not for commissioners. Commissioners have had an extended period of time that but whatever we receive in written comment will be posted online. As part of the public comment process. So this is a specific thing that we added that was required to allow for communities to be able to practice.
That's
Others. Give me 7 seconds. See 7 seconds of silence. So we will move forward, Joyce, with the framework overview discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Hughes. Thank you, Dr. Estes, for that, sharing that context as well. So as we move into the discussion, I want to be explicit upfront about what is our purpose here, right? So there's 2 things we're looking to get out of this conversation. One is to, of course, review the framework to see if there are any edits that need to be made. The second is to identify any tools, methodologies, and strategies that may need to be integrated into the annual report in 2026. And so there's sort of 2 parts to this conversation, but connected. The reason is, as we go through this conversation, there may be edits that we want initially to go into the framework, but as we discuss, might become more about, okay, maybe this goes into the annual report, right? So we're just kind of acknowledging that that can happen today, and we'll take note of that as it comes up, so that not everything has to go into this one framework, that there is more follow-up later. On that, I don't know, Dr. Estes, if you wanted to share any further thoughts on the annual report, otherwise I can keep us going.
No further thoughts, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So if we could go to the next slide now. We've been talking about a framework, and I know that there are folks who often join us at these meetings, and there's, what is a framework? What is a framework? And we talk about this in different ways. We've seen a little bit of how the framework fits into that model for transformation, right? So we know that the framework is the guiding recommendations that the commission can then encourage state and local agencies to implement. But there's another visual here that I sometimes like to share, and there's 3 parts to this. So there's a foundation, there's a framework, and then in this metaphor, this example, what we're calling a flourishing neighborhood and a thriving community. Okay, so I'm just going to move left to right on the screen. In order to build this concept of a flourishing neighborhood, a thriving community, we really need to start with a strong foundation.
right? And so that foundation is what I often consider that context, the context that we've been talking about, process, the meetings, the engagement, the conversations that have been had, as well as the executive order that provides parameters around what the commission can and cannot do, right? What's within your scope. The middle section is that framework. So we have a solid foundation and we build the structure around it. Or I'm sorry, on top of that foundation. So we build upon it. And you know, that structure is not necessarily all the way filled in. I mean, we don't have a finished house yet, but we do have an outline of one. We have recommendations, we have methodologies and tools that are designed to advance racial equity and address structural racism through budget, through data, through community engagement. So I know there's been some conversation around like framework and implementation as well. And so for the implementation piece, that's where we are filling in, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't say we, it's not the, I'll be clear, it's state agencies and local agencies are filling in the rest of the house, right? They're looking at that frame and thinking, okay, what paint colors do I want? Do I want stucco? Do I want brick? Do I want more wood? So that is how we get to that finished product, right? And that's where that handoff from the framework of the commission goes to the agencies that you all are then supporting in terms of implementation and technical assistance. So just want to ground us in that. If we think about those two purposes that I laid out earlier, the framework where we want to confirm edits, that's purpose one. And then the purpose number two of this conversation, what do we need to consider for the annual report? There might be more detail that comes out that we want to think about for that annual report to help agencies get to their flourishing neighborhood and thriving community. So that's just another way of representing the concept of a framework, right? We know we need to sometimes provide lots of different examples and ways of talking about it and thinking about it for folks who have different types of learning and engagement preferences. And so with that, I will go into the framework discussion. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Right here, we have a quick outline of the framework structure. So we can see that there's the executive summary all the way through the toolbox at the end of the framework. As we go through the discussion today, we're going to show the questions for the discussion one by one on the slides. We can really focus in on different parts of this discussion, and we'll kind of see how we need to progress as the discussion unfolds. And so I'm also keeping an eye on time. We can be fluid a little bit, and if we're feeling like, you know, there's still a lot more to this conversation, I may push us along. But the first point up here, very quick, very simple. It's just a note to commissioners: if you have spelling or grammatical edits for the framework, we will ask that you all send those comments to the Racial Equity Commission inbox. That email address is up there on the screen. So it's both really a note for the folks following us in person and online. If you're noticing that those are your comments, please reserve that for an email, and staff will move through those because we want to save a lot of the time for that open discussion. Okay. So our first question wanted to pose to the commission for feedback here. Is this framework written for your key audience / user that we talked about in June? And these are just some questions to get us thinking about how we engage with this framework. I'll quickly read through the framework audience again as folks are thinking about this question. So in June, the commission approved the framework audience, state government inclusive of agencies, the legislature, and judicial, with support and technical assistance for other governmental entities. So as you think about that audience or user, is this framework written for that group? We can go ahead and open it up for discussion.
Commissioners, this is where you get to chime in. So
I'm confused. What are we going to talk about here? And figure the feedback on that.
We are, I mean, we're trying to set the stage with a series of questions. But we are gonna get, and so in the series of questions, thinking about your feedback at that point. There is the next question, which talks about, based on the outline that you all approved in June, is there anything missing that we said we were gonna do that we didn't do? There is also a question about, is there anything else that you'd like to share? So if there's broader content that was not voted on at the June meeting, that would be your opportunity to have that conversation and dialogue about bringing that into this framework. And also likely going through a motion to approve that additional element. So if there are multiple elements, we need to add that through multiple motions.
So we're gonna respond to the content via these questions and not going through the framework.
What, are you asking me to go through the framework one by one? Is that what?
I'm actually wondering what that is, and if, I do think it may be more fruitful to go through the.
Okay. I turn to the chair in terms of a pathway that they would like to take forward.
Well, I'm comfortable with, making sure we do have some space and time to go through the framework. I don't know what the questions are. So is there a question that maybe speaks or gives us an opportunity for that discussion? This could be easy if that's forthcoming.
Yes, can we move to slide 36 and we can take a look at it together?
And I do see your hand, Commissioner Pastor, so you're welcome to jump in while you're getting to that slide. Commissioner Pastor.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
So this actually refers to that first question. I was at, and I know I had an early look at this and offered some early feedback. I think that one of the strengths of the currently written framework is that it is trying to reach state agency folks with a series of more practical tools. And I was worried that we wouldn't do that. And I was pleased that this keeps coming back to that. So that's one comment in response to the question. There's a second comment, since it's a little bit harder to raise my hand virtually, that I'll make, which is I probably should have made it earlier, but I think it would be important somewhere in this document to note that racial equity is one form of equity. There's also equity around disability, which has racial dimensions. There's equity that's just around income and class. There's geographic equity, although some of that, again, is correlated with race. But I think that helping people understand that the charge was about racial equity, but we acknowledge there's many different dimensions of equity, but this is the charge we took on, could make people who are going to use this feel more comfortable if there's another dimension around respecting gender identity, etc., that they feel is also very vital. Why that's not fully addressed with this framework.
Thank you, Commissioner Pastor. On page 47, under the section race and the breadth of who we are, we do acknowledge the intersectionality of individuals ranging from age, gender, income, educational level, language, seen and unseen disabilities, place of birth, and income or status. That when combined with race can lead to disparate income outcomes. And so there is a brief acknowledgement here. I think the question that I have back for you is, would you like to see that weaved in a little bit more throughout the actual document?
Thank you. I guess I'd like to see it not on page 47, so that it's sort of up front, like with a sentence in the abstract and a sentence in the introduction. And I don't really want to get into the wordsmithing because you've done such a good job writing. I think that you could probably get the point that there's many different kinds of equity to consider. Our charge was racial equity. And again, even when we're considering the intersections, we're looking at the racially disparate impacts often of those different intersections. I just think it's important to be upfront. I've got it meant that but I probably wasn't paid as much attention when I got to page 47.
Thank you, Commissioner Pascal. One thing that I think we can do is weave that into the production so that it's up.
Commissioner Pastor, thank you so much. And for the sake of time, I'm really hoping we can get to a vote to this by about 11:30 or so. I see your concern, Commissioner Kim, about just having really an opportunity to share openly. So we'll move forward with that. And yeah, you'd like to start? Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'll just note that obviously the extraordinary amount of work that's going to get us to this place means that we get to respond to something that's very large, I think. And that's huge in terms of the timeline that we have. We don't have much. I do also want to be careful though. You know, we've had a couple of weeks with the document, and while it's important for us to really let the staff lead, because we don't sit in all the committees, we don't sit in all the meetings, it's a tight timeline. To expect that just to have it done right, is hard, right? Particularly since there are so many areas that I do want to discuss and look up, but really it's just to get us to the 10 million, just as so I appreciate all that work. So I'll just take right into it. I mean, a couple of things, you know, one of the things that I'm very confident would like to recommend is that we strike under the key terms on page 7, under institutional racism, it closely with the term often unintentionally. I'd like to recommend that we strike often and unintentionally. I was really excited, so then my next comment, I was really excited to see how well fleshed out the community these days, because obviously we as a solution for extraordinary work on that. There's a lot to share with the rest of the state. I did worry about not uplifting the robust network of community organizations higher in this section around and community engagement. And they are mentioned, but predominantly in terms of like language access and what have you. But I would really love to see the nonprofits, the community organizations that we consider them as long-term partners in terms of ongoing engagement and advisory. So that's another comment I'd like to make. I'm going to try to move quickly since I know we're pressed for time. On page 24, then this is a point I really strongly would want to make here. When talking about data and about equity indices, it notes at the end that the indices should not lead to ranking or rating communities, and I don't think that's a helpful thing to include in the document. In many ways, doing the work of building out disaggregated data, creating indices to track how communities go together, it is a natural outcome to show that on multiple indicators, the climate will be very different than Africa in Silicon Valley. And it's important to note that. It's important to note that there are these differences and that there are, let's say, access to the internet. One will be at the very top of the rating, one will be at the very bottom. So saying in this document, I think would actually harmful to say we should not use the indicators or index to rank. And so I wanted to note that as well. I'm going to keep going. Sorry, again, we have less time. On budget, I think we've discussed multiple times, both within the Budget Equity Committee and as a large committee, that there seems to have been a strong interest across the commission for there to be a potential statewide equity index, similar to what's been created in the LA County examples that we visited and others. Obviously, a one-size-fits-all equity index that relates to the state budget would be difficult to make. And so maybe the recommendation could be played more through in terms of an equity index related to specific programs, specific departments or agencies, so on and so forth. And so I just would just like to see some mention of that since we had discussed that in multiple meetings. Almost there, good, almost there. Then on structures, on Office of Racial Equity, I really appreciate, particularly since there seems to have been a lot of collective interest on the commission around the Office of Racial Equity. I'm a little worried that while it's in there, there's very little focus, detail, or direction of what that Office of Racial Equity would look like. And so if anything, if we could, in this inaugural document, which will, by the way, be the most reviewed, right? So, subsequent annual reports will be important, but this is the inaugural document and therefore the most important. I do wonder if we should clearly state that the commission is committed to continue the conversation around the Office of Racial Equity, that there are particular ways that we want to explore what the Office of Racial Equity might look like. Questions, for example, what is the best place within state government for it to be located? How will it best network with other equity efforts in terms of departments and agencies? What are the critical functions and staff capacities? So on and so forth. In terms of other comments or questions that we would like to explore for the Office of Racial Equity, and that we as a commission are committed to fleshing out the proposal within the next 12 to 18 months. And the last two comments I'm going to make on page 39 in terms of delivering results. In terms of the review of Prop 209, the Equal Protection Clause and Civil Rights Act, it's critically important for us to review those things, for us to be very clear about how important it is to follow all of those laws. I do also want to note that some of the experts we brought in had a different way to interpret those laws and advocate or as a constellation of laws around doing racial equity work. And I'm wondering if there's a different way for us to word that in this section. I do recall from some of the expert testimony that or presentations that while there are clear limitations in some fields like contracting and education, that we could build race-conscious programming that supports closing gaps for whole communities, while being very careful not to go out benefits or supports individually based on race. And so it seemed like a much clearer line than the way it's captured here. And the last thing that I'll note is that, in terms of, I really think that you did a phenomenal job capturing what's been dozens of community engagement opportunities here in the document. My worry is that we are often the only commission or state entity that shows up in some of these places, that people share a wide range of challenges and stories with us. And even though we are a young commission, we may need to find a way, and we might state in this inaugural document, to be able to make sure whatever is collected in these meetings are actually sent to the appropriate aspect of state government so they can do something. Right. And so if we just come in, hear their stories, and then leave, I worry we're just adding to yet another instance of a government doesn't work. I went to this meeting, I told them what was happening, and nothing happened. So the idea that we could build some mechanism long term to take those stories and get it to great news. So
thank you, Commissioner King. Lots of great information. I feel it will be wise to have Dr. Anthony to respond for the commissioner share just in case there's a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Kim, for your feedback. I do want to acknowledge in some of the reviews that we had, the legal interpretation, and I'm going to probably turn to my attorneys to acknowledge, because the audience is state government, is the legal interpretation that aligns with state government related to that law, that it's kind of out there, that we are encouraging state governments, the agencies to really work with, and they have their own councils within their own agencies and departments. And so while there's certain statements that could be made, it's really important for agencies and departments to rely on their council and their council's interpretation of the laws. But it doesn't say that we can't do this work, and I think it does reinforce that there's an opportunity that we can do this work. Related to the equity index, I will share that we have received some guidance from agencies and departments that have noted that indices potentially around more programmatic focus would be much more feasible than something that would be statewide. So I will note that. The final just comment that I'll have related to the office, and that this section is lacking no direction and detail. The initial recommendation that I had in the framework outline was to do a memo that actually would provide, and that the commission would do that work behind providing the detail about what would an office look like, where could it sit, what would be the staffing, what would the authority, what kind of authority would it need to be, and that the commission could actually go through that actual process of doing that. You actually gave the pushback that it needed to just be the office, and so we had that initial thinking behind there. I think we're coming to a middle where we may be able to integrate some context around there about, are we charging ourselves or recommending ourselves actually do the work behind articulating what an office could and should. So I'll pause there and then let other commissioners share their views.
Yeah, as it relates to the key terms, I do think this is an area people are going to look at and pull, like, this is the racial equities definition of. So I want to center on something that at first noted as being small, and I don't think it's small. Under the definition of race, where it says, for example, in the US, people are often categorized as, I'd like to suggest a reword and say, in the US, Office of Management and Budget has 5 major racial categories. I think that there are racist undertones when we don't include what those 5 categories are. We only know 3. So we should say American Indian, Alaska Native, Asian, Black, White, and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander. Those are the 5 categories defined by OMB, and they should be listed in alphabetical order. And then on key term data disaggregation, the for example, I think it's great to include example. Later in the toolkit, there's an example of data disaggregation being really important during COVID, specifically with the call out to the impact to Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander. I can appreciate that it says like if second graders are falling behind, might be more powerful if we used a race-based example.
Commissioner Magic, any response, Dr. Others?
I'm not sure if my feedback will be able to be made into the iterations based on the timeline that was just outlined. But what I would say is if we go to specifically page number 28 as my example, you know, when I keep asking around the difference between a framework versus us issuing directives, that is because, for instance, on page 28, I sort of read an element where we begin to get at what looks like a direct recommendation. So it says, one key approach may include simplifying certification processes for small businesses under the Department of General Services certification programs. Boom, that is a clear recommendation. I love it. I wish that we opened with those and then we put the context underneath so that this entire document is clearly outlined with a set of recommendations. When I read this, so much of it reads like a recount of the listening sessions. And I think if I was a state agency, let's say I was a director of DOF, I would have a hard time drilling down to that recommendation because there is so much context around it. And I personally believe that when put it in the hands of state agencies, they may miss the mark on the recommendation provided. There's a second section here that says another critical area is improving access to capital. Small businesses often cannot meet upfront costs. Then there's a prescription for helping with upfront costs for bonding requirements. That is perfect. I love that. There were 2 elements though in that I did not see that from some of the budget equity meetings, and that was a similar tone recommendation or a tool that shows the transparency process and the whole timeline of the budget. I don't see that said that way. What I do see above that is more sort of an anecdotal recommendation to improve transparency broadly for residents, which is sort of implied by the establishment of the commission rather than a recommendation for the approach. And so that's the only thing that I just want to state for the record is that you are getting directed recommendations in here. You are, I'm looking at it. And I think that if the tone of the approach in the entire document had been in that spirit, I probably would feel a little bit better.
Thank you, Commissioner Maldonado. I do want to know that that section that you're referring to is future strategies. This content we haven't even talked about as a commission, but in the conversations that we've had with community as well as conversations with state agencies and departments, these are things that have come up, but not necessarily in this space. So it would be additional conversations that we would need to bring into the public meeting space to further articulate that. I also want to acknowledge that there is very strong differences between may and shall. And we can only say may, because it's a choice of an agency or department, because this is a choice that we're trying to put before the agencies and departments as to what they can consider. And how could that work within the context of policies that we have no idea.
Correct.
And so I want to just acknowledge that these are suggestions that we could go into for future conversations, but not necessarily for the here and the now. The second item I do want to acknowledge on page 27, we do acknowledge a web-based interactive timeline on the budget process that can help support communities with understanding of the status of the budget process, and visually see where they may be better able to engage in the process.
And I think that's where the inconsistency in the affirmativeness of the language I see is that in your future strategies, it almost sounds bolder than the here and now.
And part of that is, I would say, is because that will be the responsibility of a certain agency or department, not necessarily the Racial Equity Commission. We could provide technical assistance on what that could look like, but that would not necessarily be a responsibility for, and it isn't, I mean, I think you can couch it as a recommendation. But it really is giving them the framework so that they can build a house that works within their world.
Yeah, I agree. We'd like to state for the record that that is just my particular observation, is that the here and now references are very soft and they're almost broadly. I mean, I didn't even know as a state agency how to implement what it is being recommended, because I would not be an expert in racial equity issues. So I think as a state director, I would need something a little bit more prescriptive so that it would be most helpful to me to know in talking to my staff, how do we then implement this if we wanted to? And so I just would just highlight that generally, that the document generally reads like that, but there are elements where I can see very more prescriptive recommendations. And even creative, maybe all of those recommendations can simply be gathered at the bottom of the document. Maybe that's the way to do it. Is putting them at the bottom, but you know, that can't be done in 24 hours then. Obviously.
Well, and just to acknowledge, there are a number of equity leaders throughout state departments and agencies that are already doing some of this work, have contributed to informing this work, and they're not necessarily, and we're not in a position as building a framework to do the how-to list. We're not creating a manual on how you do this, but we are available to help you think through what that looks like.
Commissioner Maldonado, I want to make sure we have ample time for everyone to be heard as major seismic concerns or considerations before we go to a vote. Commissioner Wolf.
I don't want to repeat what my commissioners have said, so I don't want to turn on. I'm in alignment, and I think I look at the substance and think the substance is there, and I'm just looking for a different structure. Yeah. I'm looking for a table of contents, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for like, if I were in a state or local agency, how would I take this and then go use it? And because these are people who are, you know, working, pulled in a million different directions, how do we make it easy for them to use? So that's really my feedback. I think it's just what I'm hearing also is that, you know, the how to use, what are the components? The definitions I think are great because they're clear, but then where does the framework, you know, definition of framework, what its intent is, what's definition of toolkit, how the toolkit relate to the framework? What are these, where do these recommendations go that we're talking about, right? That are not necessarily part of the framework, But things that come up over and over again that we think need to be raised up, like an office of equity, like an equity index. We should have a specific place that references those important discussions that we had, even if they're not part of a framework. They're important to the community. And then the section on, you know, part one, how to build your framework, I'm looking for a lot of detail, a lot of like, even though we can't give a manual, but we are giving guidance and advice, and so it needs to be clear to the person who wants to do this and needs help with it. How do I take this and take that?
Thank you for that. I think part of the structure, and this is kind of the challenge in trying to get you all a full draft, is we didn't want to have to design out something and work with a designer, and you all have major changes like this, then you need to go back and forth with a designer. And so doing things in Word and PDF is a lot easier in that process. So I think the structure shifts that we were asking for, and before like a table of contents, like an ability to click and hit and get to a section, will be all available once we have the opportunity to design out and you finalize the content of the commission. I think in relation to the more detail, that's the second half of what this commission is. It is a technical assistance body. What it looks like to do community engagement in transportation may be very different as it looks like in tribal affairs, may look very different from health and human services. And we want to make sure that we're giving the framing guidance as to these are the things you can do within applicable law, but also let's have a conversation on how we can support you within the universe for which you're operating or the house for which you are operating.
I was really just speaking to readability of this document. So details of what, there's so much here, and how do we actually present it in a way that is easier to follow. And that's what I'm saying. So there's a lot in that section. So to have part one and have all of these layers in part one is almost the whole thing. So we need to like break it down into steps in some way for readability.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Thank you, commissioners, everyone, for your thoughts, recommendations, and I feel kind of like we're in a place where there are two options on the table with implications for both alternatives. So the first would be that we essentially trust Dr. Estes and her team to take the feedback and we vote on the draft framework after hearing public comment, of course, and say we trust her to move forward with the recommendations and the edits as provided by the commission. The second option, I think she articulated in the context, is they are so excited that they would need to undergo at least 3 levels of legal review again, and then be reopened for conversation with the commission, but also the public. One thing she did mention is that this framework currently aligns with all applicable law. And so based on what I've heard, I don't know that any of the recommendations are seismic enough to say, hey, we need to make changes so that it is maybe not, aligned with all applicable law, but that will certainly take additional time and probably bring us right to the edge of the December 1st timeline.
Yeah.
So with that said, Commissioner Wright.
I'd like to motion to move forward with the recommendations of the commission.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor with the recommended edits on option 1.
I second option 1.
Second option 1.
I think with the changes, even though they may not change the meaning in the sections, I do have a little bit of concern just because again, we want to make sure everyone's in it. And so no matter the decision of the commission today, I do think it would make sense to have a next in-person meeting in October that would allow us to get through reviews and actually see what it looks like one more time. I think you're close enough, but I do wanna make sure that we're doing this in a way that the state agencies and departments that you're asking to do this work can do this. This is not about us on this day. I really wanna make sure that we are advocating for the state agencies and departments so that they're able to better serve the communities that we all serve. So I just want to make sure that I say that I think we'll still need another meeting. It will have to be in person, and we will have to have a forum.
This would be the October 14th. Holding,
I believe so.
and it would be the bigger.
We would have to figure that out because it takes about 4 or 6 weeks to plan meetings. So it would take a heavy lift from our staff, but yes, that's what it would be.
Other comments on that? Sounds like kind of block ourselves into a decision.
I just want for clarification, Dr. Isis, and that means if we do this on October 14th, that's it. So if there are any comments, even if they don't get captured in that, whatever that draft, or whatever you present at that meeting, is it?
It is it for this iteration of the framework. Remember, you always have the annual report as an opportunity to build upon this content.
And so we would have that same ability to do that even if we adopted draft as
Yes. Yes, so you can adopt the draft as is currently. I would still like to make sure it goes through the legal and kind of general reviews that it needs to go through to make sure this is in alignment with applicable state law. And then bring it back to you all again, it's like, this is what you all discussed, this is how it's been integrated so that we are within applicable state law or applicable law, period. And then we would still have the opportunity as a commission to build in the next year, whatever that annual report looks like, to add content, to refine more items, especially as we learn from state agencies and departments about what works for them or what may not be working and what works with them.
Yeah, I mean, I defer to you, Dr. Estes, in terms of the comments are significant enough that you would like to go for both review, legal review, and for the moment, of. I appreciate that. And it seems totally reasonable to the framework, which is a culmination of half of the work, for us to have one meeting to review and comments, and then another meeting to vote. I would second Commissioner Richardson's notion that where we end up in October, then we just do that vote. So that makes sense. My hope is to be able to get some back and forth on iterations of the after review of legal, after the adjustments made by staff and would be good to make sure that we can see the draft. I understand it's gotta be public for us to then make that to take that vote in October.
And just for clarification, any iteration that comes out will have to be discussed in public. So yes,
that's great.
That would be, so we can't give any advanced iterations, let me just say that, or you can't send something, iterate, and then it go back out for ongoing kind of interactive edit. So if you all choose to make additional changes, that means another meeting in November, and that is pretty much our timeline.
Commissioner.
Yes, so it seems that feedback we taken, therefore we meeting in October, we're willing to support hosting in Sacramento State if that's helpful, especially given the timeline. Given that I'm gonna offer them just 2 additional suggestions that I think are maybe easy, I'm not sure. On the page 6 definition of equity, I will just delete the first 2 sentences. Page 6 definition of equity, I would delete the first 2 sentences. Because I think that a layperson may read the first sentence and think that that's the definition of equity, that's the definition of all of people. And I just think that for the audience, they might not understand this, that's the context for why that next part comes. And then for racial equity, I would recommend that the definition, because I do not believe that it captures it. I would say a heightened focus on groups experiencing disproportionate outcomes in order to address disparities in those outcomes that are experiences.
Can you send that right now?
Sure.
Thank you.
I was going to recommend before we change the motion, well, we still have about 24 hours to get all writing recommendations, very specific language recommendations asking the commission to document the team. So please move forward with that. Just plan to move forward with that since it looks like we are going to have October 14th. Yes, Commissioner Bowles.
So just to use this as a clear example, let's say the definitions for our understanding of our policy. So we all scurry, get those to you. Do they go like in red and then we discuss them in October? Like, how does that actually, how do we decide that the suggestion that's made is still going?
Read the document, come prepared to vote in October. I mean, I'm going to have to, I can do them in track changes, but remember your track changes. They're going to be other reviews that are legal guidance that I receive as a state employee that will not. And that's just part of the legal guidance that I receive. And I don't know if my legal counsel has anything else to say behind that, but I do have to be mindful of mitigating any risk to the state.
So if an edit is made and legal doesn't agree with it, and you can't go along with it, can you say legal didn't go along with it?
That would be likely not something I would say, that I would bring it back to the commission as to these are the modifications that.
Starting to feel like the NBA project. The final is upon.
And I'm also not an attorney, unless I defer to my counsel and the counsel that represents the state of California. But they're on here, but they're definitely layers to counsel.
I'll just jump in really quickly, Larissa, and thank you for that. Happy to work on different iterations and share, but certainly want to make sure that as we're producing, the goal is public disclosure of the deliberations of the commission. So I think Larissa's got that one square on.
Language is important, and I heard references to in the opening setting of the context that sort of was to for us to keep in mind the burdens of state employees and summoning of empathy for the challenges that state employees have in implementing this. I just want to know, is that supposed to also be part of the tone in the recommendations we put? Because I know you made references to the term may and should and all that. So is part of the recommendations to also play to sort of the emotional frustrations of leadership and directors as well?
I cannot comment on that related to all state agencies and all departments, and that actually would be inappropriate. What I can say is what we looked at, and I'm trying to find the section related to structure. I believe I have a place and space in here that talks about understanding where to start in your journey. So organizations being able to assess kind of where they are, and that tunes into what some of the challenges may be within each organizational department. I think we also talked about the importance of psychological safety, as well as understanding the legal parameters for which this work can operate in. So that is on page 37 through 38. And so I think that kind of adheres to being mindful of the context that you're having on.
Absolutely. So I'll give an example to be specific, and I'll have all my recommendations by the end of today over to you all. So for instance, I would want to say something like recommendation, develop a public online budget process tracker. The state of California should create a robust online platform to track the state budget's development in real time. The digital tracker will greatly enhance transparency. Here are the following key components for engagement. 1, real-time updates. 2, granular breakdown. 3, change of explanations into plain language. User-friendly visual accountability and archives. That's how I would write a recommendation. Is there anything about the framing of how that's stated that might be inappropriate?
Please share your recommended structure. And what we can do is see if this is something we can turn around between now and Monday. I think we're in a position where we're starting to get into the weeds of, well, this is what works for me. And I want to be mindful about what works for state employees, local government, and community to be able to engage on this. So what might work for you might not work for others. And so I hear your.
Well, I want to be clear, it's what works for the people of the state of California, not for me in particular. I'm here to recommend recommendations for the people of the state of California. But I do hear your priority in wanting to look at the burdens on state employees. I think that's a new element and factor that now I'm having to mix into this sauce that I didn't really know that was that weighted before.
Yeah, I mean, I think once you all defined your audience, it became relevant. Thank you.
Mr. Kim.
Yeah, I mean, I would just note, a lot of the angles that I heard from my fellow commissioners, I'm in agreement with, some of the changes to the definitions from Andrews and Wood, some of the other changes like you mentioned. I also just think this is good for us to have a public discourse like this and to kind of show those who are interested and engaged that we're taking this seriously. Particularly when, again, it is our inaugural and most important document that we'll be producing. I did want to note just a couple of other items. I'll be sending all this to you as a document, but I want to just put it on the public record. In the budget section, I do want to see if there's a way to, beyond the questions, which I understand that we're recommending as part of the BCP process, that we also do make a recommendation of what to do when a question response is actually there is persistent gaps, right? Or there's persistent disparities. And recommending that there is an intentional and engaged interrogation of how effectively propose them, right? So looking at where there are similarities between different communities in terms of those gaps and engaging those community members, both people on the ground, about how to best close it. I mean, if we think about what we heard yesterday from members of this community, you know, they have a very clear sense of there may be a reason why certain disparities in educational outcomes from young people who come from this region. And part of it is because of a 2-hour drive they have to make starting in the fourth grade, right? That's not something that can just come out from data in Sacramento or what have you. So the kind of engagement and interrogation with communities directly. So to make that recommendation on the budget section, the other element in the budget section I would recommend is to explore participatory budgeting. Talk about multiple points of community engagement. I just think there's an opportunity to intersect the community engagement side with the budgeting side, and there is national practices adopted in many jurisdictions around participatory budgeting. So to mention that as well. The last thing this is a softer recommendation. There are in every section we feature things to explore, which I really appreciate because you have that time to review those things or what have you. But what I found was missing is here's what the mission is going to do immediately after the publication of this framework. My worry is that when we rush to produce a document like this, then we become a bit unboard afterwards. And how do we make sure that we hit the ground on day one with a set of priorities that we're actually going to do and focus on? So I think it relates to some other comments from the commission, but if there could be a summary towards the end of, hey, this is what we're going to do immediately after the submission of the Thank you.
Commissioner Kim, I just need some more clarification. Are you suggesting on adding a whole new topic area in participatory budgeting to this draft?
If need be, it could be represented in the same way that other content that wasn't fully discussed in the commission as last thoughts or future things to consider. There have been a couple of topics that we did not fully flesh out, which have to put in those sections at the end. And so if it makes more sense to put it in those sections on the budget point, then I would.
Yeah, I would, given the number of edits that you have, that this commission has put forth, the timeline that we are working on, that is one of the items, as well as a few others, that I would highly recommend this commission consider for an annual. Again, you're building the toolbox. It doesn't all have to be in the box today or October.
Maybe I just have to clarify process. So, each of us have the responsibility of getting you to recommended changes, their recommendations. And you will need to determine whether or not they're feasible based on the process that we need to go through, legal and all of the people who have to touch it. Our expectation should be that we will receive a document that will reflect some of our recommendations on October 15th or whatever such day we meet again. And whatever is not able to be incorporated, you can speak to that, but then we would have that on us to be able to look. Is that?
That is correct, and just to be clear, the draft that you would get would have to be on or before October 4th.
Okay.
Because it has to be public 10 days before. We are working under the Back-to-Keene Act.
Right.
So this is why I'm very direct about the timeline that I'm having to work under over the next 5 days, is because we have the Back-to-Keene Act that we do have.
And I appreciate that. I just think we just want to make sure we manage our expectations so people are not disappointed and think we're going to get something different. So what we may see posted before that date may not incorporate all of the business. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for that point of clarification. And I would like to ask for an amendment to the motion. Since it sounds like discussion would be come to some consensus or compromise about next steps in the process. And so what is the drop dead due date for us to get our slides in?
Well, to get your changes in, to be 100% honest, I'll need them by tomorrow morning. This is myself and staff having to do research Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and getting to that again on Sunday.
So I just want to make it clear to all the commissioners that the motion should explicitly state get your recommendations for language in by tomorrow morning. I'm going to say by 9 a.m. just to make it as crystal clear as possible, and then Commissioner Pastor, I see you.
I just want to reiterate something that Commissioner Kim started with, which is this is an amazing piece of work that the staff have pulled together. And I know that after doing that and then hearing all these suggestions, it can, having a 5-day timeline to implement them can feel a bit overwhelming. But I just want to get back to, this was an amazing piece of work. And again, I really like the way that it tried to be practical. I really appreciate how Commissioner Maldonado was talking about how it can be even more practical for state agencies. But really appreciated that work and having been able, as part of the subcommittee, to provide a little bit of feedback along the way. I know how responsive you've been, and I also know how it is that, because we have to have these wonderful public rules, Bagley-Keene, it makes it awkward to go through most of the sort of back and forth that would normally take place. But anyway, just wanted, before we vote on this, to have some kudos, be part of at least the conversation.
Commissioner Pastor, appreciate those comments highlighted.
For the record, I'm accepting.
Accept the amendment to this motion. What was captured in the motion? English that someone like to reread.
There's going to be no way to reread this. I'm gonna have to this is something else I'll probably do tonight, is review YouTube recording and work with staff to get the minutes together, so I make sure that I adequately capture everything that you all have shared today and make sure that it's adequately integrated within the draft that will go under review over the next week and a half.
So it sounds like we don't need a motion to take action.
Matt, do we need to take action? Given that the recommendations, or should they wait until the?
It doesn't seem like it happens. So we're not taking action until the next.
So let me make sure our legal counsel provides guidance on that.
Yeah, I don't think action is necessary to incorporate, the discussion or reflect and take the opportunity to go back. You do research and incorporate into a new draft for future action. I think action is best reserved for actual adoption and or negotiating any disagreements about language to be adopted into the final report. So I think action isn't necessary at this time to proceed with the consideration and the iteration of the document.
Thank you, Matt. Just to acknowledge, we often have to put items as action items on our agenda in case you were taking action.
Thank you so much. All right, I know we're running a couple minutes behind schedule. We do need to take public comment before we go to a break. So Jess, I'll turn it over to you for public comment to make sure we're incorporating into the recommendations as well.
Thank you, Chair Matthews. As a reminder, you may submit a virtual public comment card by visiting racialequity.lci.ca.gov/meetings and completing the public comment form linked there. You can also pick up an in-person public comment card at the public comment staff table and return to one of our staff members. You will need to submit a public comment card for each item you wish to speak on. We have 5 virtual public comments on this item and 0 in person. We will start with the virtual ones. If you're online, you'll see a timer pop up on your screen. Please monitor that and wrap up your remarks accordingly. Whether you are online or on the phone, Chair Matthews or staff will notify you when your time is up. After that, we will mute your microphone. You do not need to take any additional action. For virtual commenters, when you hear your name, please raise your hand on Zoom. You can do this by clicking raise hand under the participants menu, which you can find at the bottom of your screen on the Zoom platform, or by pressing *9 if you are joining by phone, and a member of our team will unmute you. Our first virtual public comment is from Vince Luce. Vince, whenever you are ready, you may begin.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Good afternoon now, commissioners and staff. My name is Vince Leus, and I'm with Prevention Institute. We're also a member of the California Racial Equity Coalition. I'd like to first congratulate and thank the commission and the staff on the release of the draft framework and all the work that has led to this moment. Against the national backlash to DEI and racial equity work, and against the backdrop of hostile attacks on immigrants, LGBTQ+ people, and communities of color by the federal administration, the release of this framework for state government stands as a brave statement on how we can actually take action on our state's commitment to defending and supporting Black, Indigenous, Latina, Asian, Pacific Islander, and all communities of color. It means something that this framework is explicit about addressing racial equity, and it means something that this framework, as the framework itself puts it, is a call to action, a call for collective and resilient action. And as you move forward in finalizing this, we hope you carry forth the spirit of this call to action, and we urge you to be bold in your recommendations to our state government and our leaders, help empower our civil servants to do their part, and lay a clear foundation and roadmap for how government can start making changes the day after the framework is adopted. We know the real work happens in implementation and in technical assistance, and that this is just the start. And Prevention Institute and the Coalition stand ready to support you in the road ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public comment is from Alejandra Ponce de Leon. Alejandra, whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Alejandra Ponce de Leon with Catalyst, California. Just really want to applaud the spirit and the soul of of what this framework is trying to achieve, the vision of doing this in co-governance and with community at heart. I think that those are like key pieces of the vision of what this framework is trying to achieve, and we really applaud that. I think in terms of really moving forward in a strong way, I think definitely we want to encourage you to own your authority, in terms of the recommendations. And, we definitely hear that this is not, you're not in a position to mandate, but I think you're in a position to own all the work, the research, the analysis, the engagement with community, and really paint that clear picture, to state government, like what is needed and is recommended, right? But it's what is needed is what needs to be articulated clearly. And something that also needs to be articulated more clearly is the why. Why should government center racial equity? And what is the role of state government in playing, to create and to exacerbate and to continue disparities in our state? But also why state government is in the place to really help dismantle it. And that is something that is missing at the beginning of your framework. I think for, agencies and different departments to put this into practice, what you have in the framework, you definitely need to tie a lot of the subsections together so that they understand how they relate to each other. How are they supposed to work in tandem with one another? And even all the tools that you elevate, there's, over 200 pages of amazing tools. And I would think, to make it easier to navigate, really elevate those tools that you as the commission have developed or synthesized from everything that you've gathered, and really let them know, these are the things that are at the foundation for you to do, and here are other things that you can look at and explore, but really help the framework to be more guiding and more directive and more clear in what is needed. Thank you.
For your comments.
Thank you. Our next public comment is from Holly Nickel. Holly, whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Hi, commissioners and staff. I'm Holly Nickel. I'm a racial equity strategist from the State of Equity program of the Public Health Institute. I'm also a Sacramento area community member. I'm one of the leads of the nation's largest racial equity and state government capacity building programs called the Capital Collaborative on Race and Equity, which is aimed to help move California state government employees, to consider equity in all their decision-making in service of transforming their institutions' policies and practices. Kudos to the staff and commission for this iteration. I'm a practitioner of racial equity, and I lead people who want to include racial equity in their state government work. I have my pulse on what government employees need to make the jump from theory to action. And so I really implore the staff and commission to flex their subject matter expertise with this document and make this document more readable and usable. I found much of the useful nuggets to be buried in a lot of passivity. You offered possible tools or ways the commission did things, but practitioners need more than that. They need to be told that as an advisory body, we advise you to do this because X, Y, Z. We advise that this should be standard across departments, boards, and offices. You have to be very clear, directive, and spell things out because you do have the authority in the way that you're subject matter experts. And even though you can't make mandates or hold departments, boards, and offices accountable per se, you can be more clear about the whys and whats of the tools and practices the commission is recommending that government should do. Connect the dots in a more direct way for people. The racial equity framework could be one of the most powerful documents in the country for racial equity. And as many people say, as goes California, so does the nation. Make this document as direct as you can. The commission is set to sunset. One of the legacies of the commission will be this document. So again, I really thank you for your work and for this great start. And I know a lot of work and thinking, meeting with community members has gone into this, and it hasn't been in vain. Kudos again, great job, staff and commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public comment is from Alina Santamaria. Whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Hello, commissioners and commission staff. My name is Elena Santamaria, and I'm a senior policy advisor at NextGen California and a member of the California Racial Equity Coalition. I want to echo a lot of what has been said already in terms of congratulations on making it to this point and being able to put together a robust framework that took many years in the making and will continue to do so in the future. So on behalf of myself, really appreciate the work of the commission and commission staff, commissioners for all the time and effort that's been put into the framework. And the coalition applauds this momentous work of the commission and its staff to lay the foundations for the work to come, and hopes the commission will be bold, directive, and specific. Referencing some points here in the framework, following the recommendations in the appendix under tools for success and organizational change, I think it's important to lay out the why state government needs to center racial equity and the vision behind the beginning of this framework. I hope that it will be used as an opportunity to speak of the role of government has played to create and perpetuate systemic inequities and the role they have to eradicate it. In order for state entities to be able to take this document and implement it, they need clear, actionable directives mapped out in clear phases and steps. And I'm reminded of the state equity assessment that was done earlier, where we heard back from state employees who would say, if it's not mandated, we're not doing it. And to be able to have those accountability metrics throughout the process to make sure that this work gets done. I really appreciate seeing that the spirit of having community is at heart, and they are creating the vision of how state government should work alongside community to help make decisions. So really appreciate to see that in the framework. And then as far as hoping for an action plan and a clear timeline as things move forward, and look forward to continuing to monitor this work in the commission's process. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next public comment is from Maria Barakat. Maria, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria Barakat with the Greenlining Institute and the California Racial Equity Coalition. I want to just name and thank you all so much for the work that you've done to get to this point. We have all been with you along the way and working in our own lanes too. And we know that the deck is stacked against us all. We know that this is some of the hardest times to be doing this work, and you've done it, and you have laid a foundation to build the structures that are needed to challenge the oppression and inequality that we continue to face in our lives and our communities. This document lays a crucial foundation for the work to come. And it anchors the spirit of community partnership and power with a vision for government that works alongside its residents and serves as the soul of the endeavor that we're on. The commission, your input and your values are deeply embedded throughout, and I really thank the commission staff and the commissioners for all their work. I want to name as well that this is a moment of deep transition in California and our country. We're facing an unknown change in administration in the future. We're facing a lot of attacks right now, and this commission has been tasked with providing the direction and structure for California to move forward in a way that it's never done before. And to do that, this document and the toolbox must be bold and directive and specific so that state agents can know what to do to take this document and hit the ground running. In my work as a consultant with state agents, I know that what they've been waiting for is a guide, of template, an action step, something that they can take and run with. And I really hope that I want to uplift all the amazing comments today by all the commissioners. And I hope that those comments are integrated into the framework. Thank you so much.
So much for your comment.
That concludes public comment for this item. Back to you, Chair Matthews.
Great. Thank you all, commissioners and community, for your insights, all of your good clarifying questions, and the direction for the RSD Center team. We will be meeting in October, and looking forward to finishing the conversation in regards to the draft framework. At this time, I know I need a bio break, and we will take a 30-minute break. I see food in the back of the room, so that those who are here, please feel free to enjoy. We will reconvene at 12:44 sharp. Thank you so much. I'll share.
Commissioner Pastor, can you hear us?
Okay, guys, we're back.
Yes, I can.
Awesome, thank you so much. We're moving forward to agenda item number 5, which is just a quick reflection from the community immersion and engagement experience. And I'd love to start just with the experience that has truly been in this community, this region of the state of Maryland. Yesterday, we had an opportunity to take a trip down the Klamath River. And the experience just by itself was overwhelming and emotional to see the beauty of this region. But then we also had an opportunity just to go put our feet in the waters of Sacred River and hear some of the history and what the salmon mean to this people, this community. And as I sat there with my feet in the water, I remember thinking this is far and away the best experience that I've had as a racial equity commissioner. So just wanted to lift up Commissioner Hedrick. Thank you so much for the vision that you give on. But then also, yesterday evening, we had the opportunity to get to engage with the local community, and many of the same things that were shared earlier, we heard again. And throughout the tours and all of the different experiences that we've had in regards to gaps in education, inequities, in healthcare, and the like. And so, as a commissioner who's had the opportunity to attend 5 or 6 of the different community engagement sessions from around the state, I just wanted to highlight a couple of the themes that I've heard across different community engagement sessions, and I think they actually align with our conversation before the lunch recess. And the first is this: everywhere we've gone, there has been a focus, a deep focus on centering community voice. Everywhere we've gone, most people have started by saying, "We're just so happy that you are here and that you are listening to us." And then the second theme that I'd like to elevate is something that I've heard, again, all around the state, but especially it's been highlighted the last couple of community engagement sessions here and also in Salinas about 4 months ago. And that is this: we're so happy that you're here, but also that you're here in a non-election year. And so it appears that, this commission is not political, or that the interests are not selfish. We're not getting anything out of this. And I spoke to a gentleman in Salinas, and he said, I marched with Dolores Ware, who's from my community in Kern County, and he said, I'm just so happy. He said, I've been doing this work for almost 60 years, and I know how it works. Folks come out, the state says they're going to listen, and they listen, and during the election years, and then we don't see them again for 2 years or 4 years or 6 years or whatever the next election is. And so I remember that mandate, which we heard from many of our communities, is please follow through. Make sure that you do something. Don't let this work die. And that is a thing that I know we discussed, and we want to make sure that the work is appropriate and right, and has the appropriate level of teeth and directiveness. But also, we're balancing that thing that it's got to be sustainable. It's gotta be something that is long-term that we can continue because that's what our communities are demanding. And then the last thing actually aligns with Joyce's framework picture, which I thought was fantastic. In fact, I'd love to give her a round of applause just for that. I enjoyed it. And the last feature or theme that I've heard everywhere is this should be an iterative process. Because no matter what we come up with, it's not going to be a silver bullet that fixes this forever. And the reason for that is because we're talking about relationships, human relationships. And so the example that I was thinking as she was going through her example, my wife and I have been married 24 and a half years, and we built a house in Bakersfield. And you get the designs, you get the A or the B or the C or the D. And that's kind of the framework. So we chose, I think features the house C. And we've been in this house for 6 years after it was built. And something that's been frustrating, I hope she's not listening, is every single year she wants to make changes to the house. She's like, I feel like the design needs to have these types of tile. And I'm like, we made this decision 2 years ago. And so her challenge, of course, to me is, don't you want to stay engaged in this marriage and this relationship? And I'm like, yes, I do. And I did not know that it changed to like this every year. But I'll stay engaged. And to me, that process of iteration is a picture really of a desire from the community just to stay engaged. For us to never think that we quote unquote solve the problem or the system so perfectly that we can just leave folks and never have to talk to them. And so I think that iterative process is a thing that we should embrace, we must embrace. And as we talk about the reports, the annual reports, the commission work moving forward, whatever it looks like, it will always have to be iterative because we're talking about human relationships. And really that is the heart of equity, is staying engaged in that process that Dr. Pastor has spoken to that several times. So I just wanted to share those things. And if there are commissioners that have any other thoughts about our experience here that they would like to share. Mr. Hedrick.
Yeah, I just want to thank the commissioners for taking the time to travel up here to my home territory. And it was personally really special. Many of you hold seats beyond this commission. You have powers of influence beyond the commission. And so I appreciate you taking time to be here to understand the lived experience of communities, both the tribal communities, but also the very rural communities. And some of those experiences we challenged with, Wi-Fi connections, cellular, also travel times to get to places where we often hold functions of related to state government, like Sacramento being 2 plane rides for most folks. So I just want to express gratitude to you all and to the staff, and then again to the tribe for hosting us here in such a beautiful way. We've traveled the state, and many governmental entities have shared their space, and it has felt different, and we've been received different. So just want to say welcome to, CEO Terralyn Pena and Vice Chairman Sylvia, who's in the room, and also the rest of the council and chairperson for welcoming us in this way. I know when I threw this out to the commission, like we're gonna go rural, and for folks, we have really attempted to go to hard to reach areas in California for this purpose. And I know it's a challenge, and we all have, like I said, everyone here is wearing multiple hats, and probably many boards are pinging you and families, just like myself. So I just wanted to express that gratitude, and also agree it's been a really beautiful experience.
I'm not seeing any other commissioners who want to share, so we'll now take public comment on agenda. Sorry, Mr. Rainer.
I just want to say thank you to the tribe. This has been one of the best experiences as our church is thinking. And I want to say we stand on your shoulders. Indigenous as indigenous people, we stand on the shoulders. The Americas, as they say, or the United States is indigenous. So it was definitely educational. I think we've all learned a lot of things that we may have not known. So truly appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Wright. And before we do open it up for public comment, I just want to also quick shout out to the person who is in the room for the first time at one of the California Racial Equity Commission meetings. And that is none other than Rico. If you don't mind standing up, can we give him a round of applause as well? For the office of finding use, and so we're so honored to have him here. Liaison for all the tribes, and so thank you for being here in person as well for your insights. All right, at this time, we will now take public comments. This agenda item, reflections from community immersion and engagement. Do we have any comments here in the room or online?
We have no public comment for this item.
Okay. We'll move forward. Thank you so much. All right, I believe that brings us to agenda item number 6, which is the executive director's report. This is an action item. That is going to be given to us, provided by Dr. Estes. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Matthews. I'll make my report pretty quick. I do want to, if we can go to the next slide, acknowledge 2 new team members that have joined us more recently. We have Jess Gadow, who is doing public comment for us today. So Jess, thank you so much. I know this is the first go around and you've done it very masterfully. You've been doing this before, so thank you so much and welcome to the team. And I also wanted to acknowledge Asia Butts, who's our intern from Sacramento State University. Asia is a journalism major and is really helping us to think about how do we tell the story of the commission and work that we've been doing over the last several months. So welcome Asia to the commission staff. Next, yes, next, I wanted to put forth a series of proposed meeting locations. It's funny, we're still got meetings to get through in this year, and yet we have to think about 2026. So wanting to, again, trying to build out the touch points of this commission and moving to communities and engaging with communities where they are. But some of the recommendations that we put forth include the Central Valley again. The Central Valley is very big. And so making sure that we are continuing to engage there. San Diego or San Bernardino is coming in Southern California. The Central Coast, and this actually comes through Commissioner Pastor. I don't know if you're aware, but we've had some really early conversations with some of the work that's happening around equity in Santa Barbara. And which really inspired us to start to take a look at what's going on down there and how do we bring the commission into those spaces and be in conversation with them, just given the inequities that are happening in an area that many probably don't think of when it comes to Santa Barbara. And then finally, Sonoma is another place that a lot of people think about wine country and not really some of the inequities that are exposed in those really farm worker communities. We are continuing to explore how we get east of the Sierras. We want to come up to Shasta County. Shout out to our 2 commissioners that are from Weed. And getting out there as well as the South Bay, and also wanting to commit to really returning again. We constantly look for ways to return back to the communities that we visit. And so going back to Antelope Valley, Salinas, and coming back up here to Colamon. And so this isn't necessarily an action item, but happy if you want to take action on it or provide any other recommendations or considerations for staff. We are required to only do quarterly meetings. And this kind of fits along with the quarterly meeting schedule with the meet and greets or the community engagement kind of happening as part of it.
Well, even if we don't take action, I'd love to open it up for questions or comments from the commissioners on the proposed schedule.
Yeah, I would love to see Shasta and just northeastern California highlighted. And so I see that here, Shasta County, with good outreach to both like Siskiyou, Modoc, and Lassen for that meeting, considering it more of like a regional approach. And then an area I don't see represented on here, and quite frankly never see represented in state operations, is the Owens Valley. So east of the Sierras, Mono and Inyo and Alpine counties. So just putting that potentially for a meet and greet, also very difficult to get to. And I mean, I guess what I'm highlighting here is like Eastern California, from the north all the way through to.
Thank you. And if commissioners have relationships with organizations or groups out in those areas, that would be really helpful for us to be able to build those connections and start building those relationships so that we can go in there with the level of protection that drive in or drive out.
Commissioner Pastor here.
Yeah, I very much support the idea of the Central Coast. And there's some really exciting work going on there. And just a reminder that when we say Central Coast, it's really 3 counties, Ventura, Santa Barbara, and San Luis Obispo, who share a lot of common characteristics. And even if we, as a commission, don't move around in those spaces, we should make sure to invite community members from all 3 counties.
And just to acknowledge, when we were in Salinas, we actually had people come in from Kings County, which is slightly inland from the Central Coast. And so that's how important it was for us to make it to that region.
Any others? Mr. Rob.
Of course, I'm an advocate for solar Bernardino, but I know it would probably be easier if people in San Diego. So just thinking about my other thoughts, and we have to fly in San Diego, just logistically here.
Thank you for that. And I have one other item. It's not necessarily continued on the slide. And this is an item that would be for action should we choose to take it. I was approached about a month ago by a student at UCLA and their Lexington School of Public Policy that were interested in doing research in alignment with the activities of the commission. And one of the areas that they are interested in researching, and this is coming from a public policy perspective, they are policy students, level policy students. And so the idea is they might take a topic or could take a topic that the commission is currently considering or has considered, conduct some research on it and be open to providing that presentation to the commission, very similarly to the USC students from last year. The topic that they were interested in, and this comes directly from the framework draft that you all had, they're interested in shared governance with particular focus on housing or transportation planning. And you know, I don't know if they formally formed their research question, but they really are interested in exploring how shared governance can strengthen decision-making processes and support equitable outcomes. And bringing it to the commission is an opportunity for the commission to provide feedback on a topic like shared governance. Are you in support of something like that? Is there refinement to the topic area that you would like to see? Or is there something else that you would like to propose potentially? I do want to be mindful that these are students on a timeline themselves with a syllabus that they have to follow. And this is basically a full school year project where they will do something out. They may come to us later in the year to talk, but they will definitely be presenting at our spring meeting in either March or April, because that would be the conclusion of their project. So with that, and it is an action item should you want to take it as an action item, but it also could be just a set of recommendations that you all have.
Awesome. Commissioners. Trying to catch people's eyes and no one think else to look at.
Dr. Pastor has something.
Yes, Mr. Pastor.
Yeah. Dr. Estes, I just want to say that if you, that does happen with those UCLA students, you can actually also have them talk to me, or I could talk to the faculty advisor about our process to maximize their experience and the utility of the work to the commission.
Wonderful, thank you.
So I think this is a great idea, and we need a motion. So a motion to move forward with UCLA students.
Research related to shared governance and public policy recommendations.
First, is there a
A
second?
second.
Thank you, Commissioner Patrick. Fantastic. We'll go to a roll call. Jess.
Commissioner Janice Bowles.
Aye.
Commissioner Virginia Hedberg.
Aye.
Commissioner John Kim.
Aye.
Commissioner Gabriel Maldonado.
Aye.
Commissioner Traco Lefers.
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Manuel Pastor.
Even though it's UCLA. Aye.
Go Bruins.
Commissioner Yolanda Richardson. Aye. Commissioner Dr. LaFoy steps out. Commissioner Savoy.
Aye.
Motion has passed.
Excellent, Dr. Estes. I did want to goes on.
Just very quickly, I mean, the two topics of housing and transportation are obviously extremely important. There are, however, other opportunities to look at shared governance where there's already infrastructure that the city has created around shared governance that obviously could use more research and improvement. For example, in the education system, there is the local control budget formula, which does require some amount of engagement between local parents with their education. And just related to what we heard last night around cultural curriculum at local schools and rural schools and tribal schools, might be particular focus. So just doing that.
That's a wonderful idea. I want to make sure that there may be one or two students listening in now, but we'll make sure they can.
Yeah, I also did want to with that Commissioner Wood did have to leave us just after 1 o'clock. That we, Commissioner Pastor. So we'll take public comments related to this agenda item, the executive director's report.
There is no public comment for this item. I'll push it back to you.
Okay. So, and we will call for the roll call votes. It says it's an action item, so I was sure, just in case, take action. Take action. All right, well, we are almost there. We are now to the final agenda item for today, and that is the next steps for staff action. Our discussion today covered a wide range of updates to framework and the work of the commission forward. Dr. Estes, what are some of the action items that you have captured?
A lot. Enough where I'm gonna rewatch the video. And say that on record. Quite a bit, but I think the appreciation that I have for each of one of you on here is the time and attention that you all have paid to the framework, the tools, the recommendations from the advocates, and being with us in this ongoing. The ask is that any items that you would like, edits, changes, comments, please be shared with us, with staff, no later than tomorrow at 9 a.m. I know that is a short turnaround, but I've got a pretty short turnaround to turn around all those items I should ask for. But between changes to the definitions, there was some comments around kind of what is next for the commission and making sure that we're being clear on what those first next steps are and building that section out a little bit more. Noting content around the network of CBOs, which we do touch on, but adding a little bit more clarity on that. There are a couple of changes around some sentences related to the equity index. intersectionality, making sure that we move something like that up into like the introduction and move it, reproduce it or create it in a way that it's upfront and people are aware of the broadness of equity, but also how race is an impact on that. Let's see if there's anything else that kind of comes. Commissioner Maldonado, I did receive your written comments already, so maybe we'll work on anything with those. We'll look at the structure and to see what are the things that we can do in about 5 days' time to create a structure around the framework as requested to support the readability and accessibility to the document and the information. That kind of wraps it up. I will acknowledge that staff are already planning. You all should have received a calendar invite already for October 14th. We'll be working on developing your travel guide so that you're able to travel to Sacramento. We already have the group reserved next to Commissioner Wood on securing our meeting location for October 14th. And we'll work on turning around a new draft that will be presented to the public no later than October 4th with your changes.
So thank you so much. With the commission, like, what's the next steps for staff? I'll give you time or so. Just have a second. So, since there are no additional actions that have been proposed, skip over that step.
Is Rico Miranda here? Rico, are you outside? He was here. Sorry, tell me. You stepped out that way? Rico was gonna come do, I believe, a ceremonial traditional song for us as with us. Why would I close that down? If you pause in before we adjourn.
All right, well, thank you, Dr. Estes. These items that you shared will be instrumental to moving our work forward as a commission. And we do look forward to reviewing that at our future meetings. Closest one in October 14th. I was trying to buy some time. Mr. Miranda to be here. Okay. Well, then that means we have reached the end of our agenda. Let's bring us to adjournment. May we adjourn the meeting by common consent. So my hands not including Commissioner Pastor. Thank you to the Racial Equity Commission staff, commissioners, and the public for joining us today. California Racial Equity Commission is scheduled to convene on October 14th at Sacramento State University. The meeting will be accessible virtually and in person, Sacramento, California. Please know that the commission may convene prior. Well, no, we won't be able to convene prior to the December meeting. But that we will publicly notice the meeting in accordance with the Banking Act. With that, we are adjourned at 1:19 p.m. Thank you so much for your time. Great.